I've always seen myself as a reasonable man, the kind who follows the rules, pays his taxes on time, and does his best to be a good neighbor. My name is Michael, and after spending 15 long years grinding away as an electrical engineer in the corporate world, I had finally achieved a lifelong dream, owning my perfect piece of land. 2 acres of breathtaking property in the prestigious Whispering Pines development, complete with a serene private pond and a small, peaceful wooded area at the back. It was everything I had envisioned. Sure, the Homeowners Association had its set of rules, but the listing agent reassured me that they were just the usual guidelines meant to keep property values stable. Sounded fair enough. I reviewed the covenant thoroughly, found nothing alarming, and eagerly signed the dotted line. For the first year, life was as close to perfect as it could be. I designed and built my custom home, carefully landscaped every inch of my property, and even installed a few discreet solar panels. The HOA board had approved them after I demonstrated that they wouldn't be visible from the street. I attended every quarterly meeting, paid my dues promptly, and maintained my property with meticulous care. My neighbors, though pleasant, mostly kept themselves, exactly the way people with wealth and a desire for privacy often do. Everything was peaceful until Elaine Cartwright stepped in. Elaine, who had only lived in the community for 6 months, campaigned aggressively to become HOA president, making grand promises to elevate Whispering Pines into the most exclusive and desirable development in the entire county. What did that actually mean? Well, we found out at her very first meeting as president when she presented what she called her Community Enhancement Initiative. Whispering Pines shouldn't just be a collection of houses, she proclaimed, flashing an ambitious smile. It should be a true community, with shared spaces and amenities that bring us all together. Sounded noble enough. That is, until she started going into the details. The HOA, under her leadership, would reclaim underutilized portions of private properties for community use. Walking trails, picnic areas, even a community garden. These were all part of her vision. My stomach twisted when she brought up the map. There it was, my property, highlighted. Nearly half an acre around my pond had been marked as Phase 1 Community Nature Area. The second floor open for questions. My hand shot up. Excuse me, but that's my private property you're designating as community land. I never agreed to this. Elaine turned to me with a patronizing smile. Actually, Michael, if you check Section 12, subsection D of the covenant, you'll see that the HOA reserves the right to designate limited common areas for community enhancement, with appropriate compensation to affect the homeowners. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I had read the covenant carefully. I didn't recall any such provision. I'll need to review that, I said, voice tight. And what exactly does appropriate compensation mean? Elaine's expression didn't waver. The board is offering a 10% reduction in your annual HOA dues, she said smoothly, as if this was a more than generous offer, which, considering the minimal impact and the increase in your property's value from this community improvement, is quite fair. Minimal impact. They were talking about letting strangers into my backyard, giving them access to my pond. That wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a massive invasion of privacy and a security risk. Her smile stayed in place as she continued. The area will be accessible only to Whispering Pines residents, and only during daylight hours. We'll also install appropriate signage and path markers to ensure visitors respect the boundaries. I looked around the room, searching for support, but most homeowners whose properties weren't affected either seemed indifferent or were outright nodding in agreement. A few others who had been targeted looked just as worried as I felt, but they remained silent. I need to consult my attorney about this, I finally said. Elaine gave a gracious nod, but her eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. Of course, we'll be proceeding with the preliminary planning in the meantime. The full implementation vote is set for next month. I left that meeting in a daze, covenant in hand, already dialing my real estate attorney. This couldn't possibly be legal, could it? As it turned out, the provision did exist, buried deep within convoluted legal jargon, cross-referenced with other sections to make it nearly incomprehensible to anyone who wasn't a lawyer. Marcus, my attorney, didn't sugarcoat it. This is an unusually broad authority for an HOA, he admitted. but it was disclosed in the covenant you signed. That being said, they do have to provide reasonable compensation. And a 10% dues reduction? That's laughable for what they're trying to take. So I can't stop them? I asked, dread sinking into my gut. Marcus exhaled. I didn't say that. The covenant gives them the right to designate areas, but any modifications must comply with local zoning laws, safety regulations, and property ordinances. That gives us room to maneuver. Over the next few weeks, I researched like a man possessed. I watched as small flags appeared along the proposed trail route on my property. A surveyor even showed up one morning, unannounced, claiming the HOA had sent him to mark boundaries. I politely but firmly asked him to leave. Then, I received an official-looking letter outlining the community nature area implementation schedule, which detailed the dates for fence removal, path installation, and even bench placements, all starting just 2 weeks after the upcoming vote. They weren't just planning. They were assuming approval was a given. The final straw? I came home to find Elaine standing in my backyard, flanked by 2 HOA board members, gesturing toward my pond as they discussed what sounded like plans for a dock. That was it. I wasn't going to let this happen. And I had just a plan to stop them.